There are two ways of looking at the box office for Thunderbolts, aka the new Avengers. On the doom and gloom side, the movie had the second worst opening ever for the MCU. Or, on the bright side, to get anyone at all to see a Marvel team-up of D-list characters is kind of impressive, given the sad state of the MCU right now. Welcome to the Box Office Revival. I'm Brandon Gray, the creator of Box Office Mojo. So Thunderbolts debuted to $62.8 million, marking the 36th consecutive #1 debut for the MCU, and it was also the third biggest debut of 2025 so far, trailing Captain America Brave New World by 14 million. By the way, you may have noticed that I'm calling Thunderbolts at 62.8 million for the opening weekend, whereas everyone else is saying 74.3 million or 76 million for the studio estimates on Sunday. Well, that's because I do this the correct way, which is to exclude money made prior to the weekend, because that's not part of the weekend. So Thunderbolts did about $11.5 million on Thursday, and if you add that to its weekend proper gross of $62.8 million, you get the total of $74.3. We must keep our weekends apples to apples here. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's the definition for a weekend chart, and the entire industry is guilty of this. Every time you see an opening weekend, it's including preview grosses, and they're all wrong to do that, so we've got to fight the good fight for accuracy in box office reporting. Now, I do include preview grosses in the total gross. That's where they go. So Thunderbolts total through Sunday was $74.3 million, but its actual weekend was $62.8 million. Now, while we're still in the weeds here, I do have a bone to pick with Disney. They've been consistently overly bullish with their Sunday projections. In case you're unaware, those weekend box office reports you see on Sunday are estimates, and they include a made-up number for Sunday. And those numbers are coming from the studios themselves. And sometimes those projections are made with a media narrative in mind, it seems. Because, like it or not, Sunday is when people talk box office, and they don't often go back to look at the actual numbers later in the week. The trades themselves rarely update their box office reports after Sunday. So in the case of Thunderbolts, while the $1.7 million difference between the studio estimate and the actual gross doesn't seem like a lot, psychologically, Disney could claim that Thunderbolts had a bigger start than Ant-Man and the Wasp or Shang-Chi with that estimated $76 million. And not only that it came in at the higher end of industry expectations going into the weekend. With $74.3 million, they couldn't claim any of that. And the key to what they did lies in the daily box office. These are the estimates from Sunday. You'll see Thunderbolts here with $20 million on Friday, then a 22.5% improvement to 24.5 on Saturday, and then Disney projected an 18% drop-off on Sunday to another $20 million, getting them to that 76 number for the 4-day launch. This was a red flag to me at the time because they were essentially saying that Thunderbolts had the same momentum, the same level of word of mouth going for it as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which debuted on the first weekend of May in 2023. Guardians 3 having an A cinema score versus an A- for Thunderbolts. But given the similar May launch, it does make sense to model your projections somewhat after Guardians. But Guardians itself fell 19% on Sunday, so they are saying Thunderbolts would hold better on Sunday than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now here's what actually happened. You see, Sunday, Thunderbolts was down 28%. Disney overshot their Sunday projection by 12%. Dang, I hope I'm not alienating my audience. This is sounding a bit esoteric, but believe me, this is spicy stuff. And I have to assume if you're watching a box office revival video, you're looking for that deep dive into the data. Anyway, to sum up, I'm not saying Disney overprojected on purpose, but this also happened with Captain America and Snow White, and that's kind of sus. Anyway, now crawling back out of the weeds here, Monday numbers are in, and look at this. Thunderbolts is mirroring Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Each were down about 72%. And now the Tuesday numbers are in, and would you look at this? Thunderbolts was up 49% from Monday. Could the rebrand to the new Avengers have helped? Possibly, but a lot of movies got a nice Discount Tuesday bump as well. Now, Guardians 3 only jumped up 24% on its equivalent Discount Tuesday, but the bigger the gross, the smaller the bump typically. And if Thunderbolts continues to track like Guardians, its second weekend could come in at around $40 million. Now, back to this past weekend. With $62.8 million, Thunderbolts does rank as the 32nd highest grossing opening weekend ever for an MCU picture, but that's just dollars, not attendance. Intelligence estimates that 4.7 million tickets were sold for Thunderbolts over the weekend versus 5.7 million for Captain America Brave New World earlier this year. Another way to estimate attendance is to adjust for ticket price inflation. And one day I'll make a complete chart of all the Marvel movies for you, but I don't need to go that far to tell you that Thunderbolts had the second worst MCU opening ever in terms of estimated attendance. Even Eternals and the first Ant-Man sold more tickets. It's only ahead of the Marvels. And since Thunderbolts is now being touted as the first team-up of the new Avengers, let's compare them to the old Avengers. That's right, that first Avengers picture from 2012. It opened at $207.4 million. It was the first movie to ever cross $200 million in a single weekend. And if you adjust for ticket price inflation, that's the equivalent of nearly $300 million today, which means that the new Avengers were roughly 1/5 the size of the old Avengers. All right, I think I made it pretty darn clear that the new Avengers, aka the Thunderbolts, weren't that hot at the box office. But what did you expect from what was essentially a sequel to Black Widow and various Disney Plus shows that very few people watched? Not to mention the stank of Captain America Brave New World still lingering in the air. Brave New World had the lowest cinema score ever for an MCU movie. It got a B-. Thunderbolts got an A-. And I think you could argue that Thunderbolts isn't as disappointing as that Captain America movie because Thunderbolts is not a mainline signature brand like Captain America is. I'm certainly not the first to say this, but Marvel is on the ropes, aside from the farewell tour of past fan favorites like Deadpool and Wolverine and Spider-Man No Way Home. The MCU clearly has been adrift since Endgame, failing to launch any new characters or franchises, at least not successfully. So the hope is that Thunderbolts will be so beloved by the few people who see it that can help rebuild the brand moving forward. It's funny, Thunderbolts has been seen as Marvel's answer to DC's Suicide Squad. But Marvel's gone even farther by promoting their D-listers to the A-list in a particularly meta fashion. So you see, within the Thunderbolts movie itself, the new Avengers are a slapdashed crew that's created on the spot and then mocked in the end titles. So with Marvel now rebranding or renaming the Thunderbolts the new Avengers, it's like they're trying to recreate the end of the actual movie itself in real life. I suppose there's a danger in cheapening the Avengers brand, but hey, let's see if this fun marketing ploy pays off. By the way, the demographic breakdown for Thunderbolts over the weekend was 64% male, according to ComScore via Disney, and Thunderbolts skewed younger than Captain America Brave New World. 51% of the audience was between ages 18 to 34 versus 43% for Cap. Now, as tepid as Thunderbolts may be, Sinners is still sublime. Even though the vampire pick lost all of its premium screens, all of its IMAX screens to Thunderbolts, it was down only 28%. And in terms of attendance, I'd estimate the drop was closer to 20% or less, because remember, premium screens come with premium prices, oftentimes 20% or more higher than the regular ticket price. Additionally, that $33.1 million third weekend is the highest grossing third weekend ever for a horror movie, unadjusted of course, edging out It, the first one, which did $29.8 million in its third weekend. Now here's the real doozy when it comes to Sinners this past weekend. For IMAX, Thunderbolts was at best a lateral move versus Sinners. Let me explain this. Thunderbolts reportedly saw 11.3% of its business go to IMAX, or roughly 8.5 million. Sinners last weekend saw its IMAX shares rise to 23%. So assuming that Sinners maintained that 23% share for IMAX this weekend, it would have done $8.7 million, or slightly more than what Thunderbolts actually did. And we all know the momentum of Sinners. It probably would have had a greater IMAX share this weekend than last. Meanwhile, in third place, a Minecraft movie dipped 40% to $13.7 million. And the weekend featured the Block Party edition of the movie, encouraging all you chicken jockeys to sing along with Jack Black and company. And there's plenty to sing about when your picture's about to cross the $400 million mark. There was far less enthusiasm for The Accountant 2, which plummeted 57% to $9.5 million in its second weekend. The decline was steeper than the first Accountant, which dropped 42% at the same point, and the running tally is about 13% behind, even without adjusting for ticket price inflation. Not much else was happening beneath The Accountant 2. Even the new Nicolas Cage picture, The Surfer, was a complete wipeout. Nevertheless, there was no contest between this weekend and the same weekend last year, thanks to that 1-2 punch of Thunderbolts and Sinners, each of which made more than last year's #1 movie, The Fall Guy. Still, there is a price to be paid when you have the worst summer kickoff ever for any Marvel movie, not just MCU, even without adjusting for ticket price inflation. So this weekend was down considerably from 2023, 2022, 2019, and on and on and on. Year to date, overall box office reached nearly $2.5 billion, which is 16% higher than 2024 at the same point, but it's still behind 2023 and it's way behind 2019, about 31% behind that year. And here are the top grossing movies of 2025 so far. Of course, a Minecraft movie is #1, and Sinners has stacked up $187 million, and by May 9th will surpass Captain America: Brave New World to be the second highest grossing movie of the year so far. And check out Thunderbolts. Those new Avengers have already eclipsed the lifetime tally of Snow White. Now back to the question of the moment. Is Thunderbolts a flop? Well, judged by the MCU's historical standards, the answer is yes. But then the MCU is at a low point. I mean, due to all the quality issues, the lack of direction, all those unnecessary Disney Plus series that not only cheapened the brand, but made it far too complicated for general audiences to follow. Not to mention that for many, the MCU essentially ended with Endgame in 2019. Even in the best of times, an ensemble action picture with relatively unknown characters like Thunderbolts would have been lower tier MCU at the box office. Now, the dire state of Marvel is dragging it down further. So it's not so much that Thunderbolts itself is a flop, but that Marvel's decision-making that got us here certainly is. And that's a wrap for our box office report for the weekend ending May 4th, 2025. Now, if you're looking for more of that objective perspective on the movies and the box office, well, you came to the right place. So please like this video if you liked it, share it, and subscribe to the Box Office Revival. Thank you for watching.